Mic check. Just like that, we're live. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live, watching it back. Appreciate you being here. Talk about what some numbers may look like for GameStop's earnings report today. Report is this coming Tuesday, but we're going to talk about what that report might look like today. So let me just get situated here. Got a few different things on my mind, but definitely going to do at least one more earnings preview stream before the actual release. I'm thinking Monday night or Sunday night, so stay tuned for that. Follow me on X, or if you don't already, that would be at Tetron Invest right here. I don't know if you guys saw the breaking news. President Trump and Elon Musk have ended their wild feud after coming to agreement that GameStop is the best place to buy the Switch 2. It's just facts, right? It's just facts. GameStop brings everyone together. It's just how it goes. But here we are, another week in the books. A couple options I sold, expiring worthless today. So love to see that. I had a $29 put, expire worthless, and a $27.50, which I just sold literally a few days ago. On the 4th, I opened it. I figured we were trending down a little bit at that point. I think I sold it right back here. So I'm like, I have some extra cash on the side in my active account. Why not get a little quick premium, right? It's nothing remarkable at all, but a little something. And just as I continue to sell options, I really want to go out of the money, even if it's not a whole lot of money necessarily. Really what I want to do is mostly stay in cash. When needed, I will sell a call, but ideally that won't be the case, right? So going into earnings, I do want to also stay cash heavy because I think it's certainly a possibility that there's a dip after earnings. And if that's the case, I want to be able to deploy capital to put up as collateral to sell the next put option. So right now I'm riding a $25 put. That's done pretty well. Obviously the price is pretty far from 25 at this point. So unless we have a dramatic fall, that one should close out of the money. That'll be nice. And then the 28, not so overly confident in this one, but also I want a little bit of exposure because if it does jump up after earnings, right? Let's say it jumps to 33, 34, 35, somewhere in that range, even back to 37 where we were like just a week ago, I would then hold off on selling options, right? And, just keep in mind, I'm just a guy on the internet. I'm not here to give you financial advice. So while you may see what I'm doing in selling options, just remember I'm just learning and perfecting my craft in real time. Just want to show you guys and just make sure, if you're going to go the route of selling options in any way, make sure you fully understand all possible outcomes, right? I think that's really important. Just understanding like the little things like that really goes a long way as time rolls on. So always be sure to do that. Let's go. P long sock. Thanks for being here. What up? But yeah, we're getting close to earnings. So really not going to sell any more options until after earnings to kind of see what the numbers are. Maybe wait a little, right? I'm not like overly anxiously selling options. And again, that's my active account. For those of you that don't know, my long-term GameStop shares and long-term investments in general, I keep separately entirely from the option selling. That's something I've really done over the past year or so. Been fortunate enough where it's worked out pretty well as a little side income and something, I continue to want to perfect my craft on. So I think the main thing, right? I feel like this earnings is like a lot of wild cards, so to speak, right? In the sense that now Bitcoin is a part of the equation. So it's like, how much is the market looking for Bitcoin buys versus the actual numbers for the company, right? Let's say they come out with great numbers. They come in with an EPS of like 13 cents, right? I think that would be pretty strong. Just throwing a completely random number out there. Not saying that's necessarily what will happen. If that were to happen, right, I could see a situation where the stock drops and then the headlines are, well, oh, GameStop doesn't provide any updates on their next Bitcoin buys. So that's why the stock is down, right? But at the same time, I think anyone who's been in the stock for a long time at this point knows, you just don't know with GameStop. So that's why I think it's best to be prepared for anything and everything. And also for those of you that don't know, I'm not ever here to tell you like, oh, sell options, do this, do that. I really just want to ultimately report as accurately as possible on the GameStop story and cover what's going on because I feel like there's not a whole lot of people out there doing that. Of course, there's some, but that's ultimately my goal. So, I'm not ever here to say like, do this, do that. I'm just here like, okay, here's the story. Here's what's going on. Let's cover it in real time, right? So I think Bitcoin is part of the story, but also EPS and just general numbers. So SG&A, right? Like I tweeted out, I'm hoping to see below 270. And ultimately, I do think this number needs to get below 30%. Will we see that? Possibly. It really kind of depends on revenue in terms of the percentage. I think below 270 is very possible. We saw that in Q2 of last year, and then it crept up a little bit towards the end of the year, and I think that's just because of generally a busier time for the company. It's obviously still seasonal, and hopefully as more PSA cars are sold and grading becomes a bigger part of the business, it becomes less seasonal. But at the same time, it is what it is, just the nature of the business. And then in terms of margins, I really think gross margin needs to consistently be above 30%. And I think card grading and just general focus on collectibles will push them in that direction. Each time I go to GameStop, I feel like there's less and less, games and more collectibles. Generally speaking, right? Obviously, I'm just thinking of my local GameStop or GameStops. So it doesn't necessarily mean, oh yeah, like every store's like that. But generally, it seems to be the direction they're going just based on the tonality, closing down international locations. And ultimately, of course, operational margins got to be positive for the full year. So we've seen them, bounce around in the low single digit negative operating margin, and then each time the operating margin's profitable in the fourth quarter. I think they really need to find a way to get this number consistently positive. And I feel like they're really close. I have decently good faith that it'll be this next year. I'm not going to say with absolute certainty, but I think they're definitely trending in that right direction. And we see the net margin is pretty much all in the green as of this time. It's purple on the screen here, but in the green in the sense over 0%. And we saw last year, yes, they did turn a profit, but they just eked out like a small profit this past year. Or I'm sorry, in 2023 that was. In 2024, we saw, okay, they got a nice decent profit, but really it's all a result of the net income, not the operations, in the sense that the difference is the interest income they've been accumulating. It still counts, right? Because keep in mind, they raised this capital and the stock price has risen since the share issuances. Generally, right? I guess you could say technically not, but I mean in the sense like if you look back before they offered shares 3 times, at that point, stock was trading around $10, $12, $8 even. What was it, $8? No, it was as low as 10. So from there, the price has increased fairly significantly. So I think you could say, oh yeah, like it's just because of the cash, but at the same time, they haven't rushed to use this cash. They're like, okay, we're gonna earn interest on it for the time being. And also people are like, oh, they haven't used their cash, they haven't done anything, right? They haven't done anything this whole time. But you do have to keep in mind, right, when they actually issued the shares, it was back here in this period, right? So if we zoom out a little, really the 5-year chart's the best way to show it because we've got the weekly candlesticks here. So the share issuances were all in this era, right? In this time period back here. So back here, right? It's been basically just a year they've had this cash, and if they haven't seen the right opportunities and we've been in a general bull market, it's like, why go overpay for something you might as well earn on your cash for the time being? And I feel like that's kind of been their mindset. They're looking for the right acquisition opportunity or the right thing to not, generally speaking, it'd be like research and development, but I think more so spending towards improving the business in some aspect or increasing revenue, right? Because they ultimately do got to get back to that. If they don't go the route of just acquiring assets, right? If they theoretically started acquiring other publicly traded stocks, buying out small private companies, then maybe that's not the case. Oh, voice crack there. But then maybe that's not the case where it matters so much in terms of revenue. But what I do really like is that profitability continues to trend up, slowly but surely. And they're going to have positive free cash flow by the looks of it. Not 100% for this quarter, but I think for full year 2025, they're absolutely looking like they're going to get there. So with all of that, we have the next quarter coming up, right? And whatever happens, right, there's the Bitcoin side of it, the EPS side, the French locations that are going to be sold off, right? They sold off the Canadian operations, which should yield a one-time profit. To what extent, I'm not sure. I've been trying to do a little bit of research, but I haven't dove that deep into it. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. And also, for the numbers, you do have to keep in mind now, you have basic loss per share versus diluted loss per share, right? Looking back to the same quarter of last year. This will be different now, right? Because obviously they issued more shares. So earnings per share, it'll be divided per share in existence, but then diluted, if I'm not mistaken, feel free to throw some information out there if I'm wrong on this in any way, but as far as I can tell, the shares that would be issued to the convertible note holders, right? Because if you convert your note to shares, because convertible note's in the name, that's considered like diluted shares, right? So that will be factored into diluted EPS, right? If EPS comes in, let's just say, using simple numbers at 6 cents per share, diluted EPS might be at like 4.5 cents, right? Roughly. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind there. And then cost of sales trended down, year over year. That's another thing I want to see continue to trend down. And I think we see that with collectibles, PSA, that whole general genre. But I think overall, right, as I'm talking about this in real time and thinking about it, the market's looking, as it seems to me, right, for either like a big EPS beat or a big Bitcoin buy. And if we don't get either of those, I honestly see the stock dropping. Maybe you don't want to hear that, but I'm just trying to keep it real with you guys. And also, I'm just a guy on the internet. I could be wrong, right? You never know, especially with GameStop. Any stock in general after earnings, you don't know how the market's going to digest the news. And with GameStop especially, you truly don't know, right? And it's just so fitting, though, that every time there's actual good news, like they actually bought the Bitcoin, that was literally the top of the most recent rally, right? If you think about it, like this was right when they came out with the fact that they bought the Bitcoin. It's like, okay, it's dropping right down. So ultimately, I really want to see them buy more Bitcoin, but I'm also okay with them not rushing. And as I was kind of saying last stream, I don't want to see them buy more than what they raised with the capital issued. So the capital raised was the 1.5 billion. They've used about roughly 500 million of that, assuming they bought around the time of the filing that they actually bought. And if that's the case, they're about break even on their Bitcoin right now. And we should find out their cost basis on this report. So that'll definitely be interesting to see. And of course, there's always like the unforeseen event, like they bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin and a dip in the past, and they sold some on the run up, and then now they're just holding, right? Although I really don't think that's the case. I'm just saying it's like a possibility because people have been pointing out how technically, they don't have to file when they bought the Bitcoin right away because they only filed it when they were doing the Bitcoin conference because it was going to be announced. So at that point, they have to file it. And with that, they did invest. They updated the investment policy, and the investment policy basically said that they would allow the company to buy Bitcoin. And that's kind of them saying it. So basically trying to offset the material event, if that makes sense, in a way that it's like, okay, well, we already disclosed this is what we're doing, so why would we have to file it within 3 days? Like a standard 8K filing is needed for a company like MicroStrategy, right? But of course, we don't know until we know, right? So we have to see what the actual numbers look like, but we should get the cost basis. I'm curious to see, did they buy more? I think it's possible, but I don't necessarily think so. But I could see them buying like another 500 million next quarter, another 500 million after that. And then could they issue shares? Could they raise capital through another convertible note offering? It's always possible, right? But convertible note offering, if you think about it, they only use 500 million of that out of the 1.5 billion they raised. Because keep in mind, it was a 1.3 billion offering, and it was upsized the additional 200 million because the demand was there. And by the way, there was a lot of demand because it was priced right away after the initial proposal, like literally the next day. So if they didn't use that full 1.5 billion yet, why would they go raise more, right? And why would any other buyers be like, okay, well, you didn't even use that capital yet. Why would we necessarily want to buy this? So I think they'd have to use up that full 1.5 billion before they issue more convertible notes. Again, that's just my opinion. Could they issue shares? Maybe, but I just don't see why that would be needed at this time unless you're preparing for some kind of big move where they're about to spend like a significant amount of their cash. But overall, I think we're going to see that they bought the 500 million of Bitcoin. The cost basis is going to be about 104,000, 105,000, right? Right around where we're trading right now. And then they're going to have a lot of cash on the balance sheet, and they're not going to say too much. That's honestly my ultimate prediction. And then I'm still thinking about what I think EPS might look like, margins might look like. And if they have a strong quarter in terms of like margins, right? Like if they can get gross margin over 30, operating margin is profitable, and net margin obviously will be profitable because of interest income. That's a really good sign for the rest of the year ahead. So there's a lot of like question marks with this report, not in the sense of like, oh, things might look bad or good, but just in terms of like how the market's going to digest it, and also what are we going to hear about? Like, are we going to get anything significant? It almost feels like the market is like thinking now, like, okay, this is a Bitcoin treasury company. We need to hear about Bitcoin. So if we don't hear about Bitcoin, but yet the EPS is really good, price could go down. Maybe EPS goes up. Bitcoin, they talk about EPS doesn't go up. They talk about Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden, boom, right? Or there's some disclosure in there about Bitcoin or indication they're going to buy more. But at the same time, you think about it, it's like that's so non-GameStop like. And even what did Ryan Cohen say in his interview he did at the Bitcoin conference? That was streamed, pre-recorded, whatever. He basically said we're going to follow GameStop strategy, and for obvious reasons, paraphrasing here, we're not going to disclose what we're going to do. We're going to do what we think is best, essentially, is what he said. So those are kind of some of my thoughts going in. Again, appreciate you guys being here. Jesse, what up, what up? 51 gang, hey, that's what they call us, right? But really, I'm just ultimately most curious to see the numbers, like the actual numbers, and then also the breakdown. And then, of course, there's always the wild card that they made an acquisition of, let's say, a private company for $1 billion, because this company is stacked with cash right now. There's no doubt about that. So that could definitely move the market for positive reasons. But again, you just don't know with GameStop. So also, historically speaking, going into the earnings, if the option pricing, right, I don't know what it is right now, but usually like how it works is like the options, both the calls and the puts, price a move of like 12% each way, or 13%, 14%, whatever it is, right? Expecting a move a certain way. Historically speaking, if the expected move is like a 12% move up or down on the earnings, historically speaking, GameStop usually moves less than that, whether it's up or down. It would be only like 6 or 7%, because then what happens? All the option buyers, IV crush, and all options decline in value that are in the near term, right? Because the IV crushes, because it moved less than expected. And that's also why I choose to sell options, but I'm not going to sell them too aggressively going into the earnings report. But for me, I feel like option buyers have been consistently burned on GameStop, one way or another. Like there's always a lot of expected volatility one way or another. And don't get me wrong, there is volatility on GameStop sometimes. But more often than not, it seems like option buyers, whether it be puts or calls, it doesn't work out too well for them. So that's kind of what inspired me to take the other side of trade. I've been reading about selling options for a while. And also, given that I follow GameStop so closely and I feel like it's the company that I'm invested in that I know the absolute most about, and I'm following the closest, and I feel like I have almost every little detail coming down at this point, right? Not saying I'm like this expert investor, but saying that I felt the most comfortable selling options on GameStop because I'm the most familiar. And again, my strategy is to mostly sell puts. Only on occasion I've had to sell calls. This is, I was messing with Mara back here. That didn't work out too well. I had one quick good play with Tempest, but honestly, that was a little bit risky. So I was like, I don't know too much about that company. I don't want to keep selling options. That was when Pelosi had bought in. IV was really high, and I saw a little bit of upside. So thankfully, that worked out well. Mara, not so much. So while I collected a lot of premium, overall, I sold for this net loss, and then this was my net loss on Mara altogether. I could have stuck around with it, right? I could have kept selling puts, kept selling calls, and probably got back to the green. But honestly, I was like, you know what? I'm done with Mara. I'm done with the Bitcoin miners. I'll just buy and hold Bitcoin, buy and hold GameStop, own a tiny bit of MicroStrategy. So for that reason, I just kind of moved on, and I was like, I'd rather just use all my capital in this particular account to sell puts on GameStop. And when needed on occasion, right, I've had to sell a call. But thankfully for me, for the most part, it's been uptrending. So there's been 1, 2, 3, only 3 instances where I've had to sell a call on GameStop, and ultimately I've sold it at the strike. The put was exercised, so I basically then turned around and waited until the price went back up to cover that. And you can't just do that with any company, but with GameStop, where I know they have strong underlying fundamentals and that it'll move in these certain cycles, that it's fine. If needed, I'll sell calls for the time being. But I'd much rather sell puts. And with selling puts, you collect on the underlying cash money market interest. While it's not dramatic, that definitely adds to my profits, right? So 2024, I was able to earn 177 in interest on the money market account underneath, like just the underlying cash that I'm putting up as collateral for the put sales. And then 2025, I've earned 130 so far. So you might be like, well, how 2025 is not even half over? How are you almost at what last year was? And interest rates are slightly lower, or the money market rate is slightly lower. Pretty much it's because I've been adding to this account, and also this is my net gain since I started doing this. So that's helped me, continue to kind of get the snowball going. But again, I'm just a guy on the internet. I'm just sharing what's worked for me. I've made plenty of mistakes in the past, prior to going into selling options. I used to buy options a lot back in 2020, 2021. Kind of how I got involved in GameStop. I had a really big option in the beginning, still trading them throughout 2021, and I was like, that's it. That's it. I've squeezed all the juice of joy out of the option buying lemon. So I was like, you know what? I'm done. And then time went on, kept learning about options, educating myself. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to sell some options. I'm going to sell some options and do that with a set portfolio. And it's worked out well so far. It's not a guarantee it'll continue to work out, but I try and just manage my risk and just continue to sharpen the saw and get smarter. So he puts on GME, you trash, you getting pennies, lol. Kevin, hey, it's worked out all right for me, but listen, I'm sure there may be some better options, right? Not, no pun intended. Some better choices out there of things to sell options on or stocks to sell options on. But for me, again, I'm just really the most familiar with GameStop. So that's why it's worked well for me. And I keep my long-term shares completely separate from all this. So I'm never, ever selling calls on my long-term position. I know some other people do that, and that's totally fine. But for me, I just want to leave those shares because I also understand this is the type of stock that I could just spike out of nowhere, right? Like, look, back here, if you were selling calls out of the money, you probably thought, oh, I'm good. And then all of a sudden it absolutely explodes, right? But obviously the most recent one is not great, but the 99, decent little collection, 217. So I've been doing more weeklies lately, but I like to do a mix of monthly and weeklies. But enough of options. Let's get back to looking at last year's Q1 numbers. So really, I do want to see positive EPS for a couple of reasons. One, I think they really should be profitable quarter in and quarter out at this point. They're getting, if not this quarter, I feel like Q1 of next year will absolutely be positive because historically Q1 is their weakest quarter. So that's also why I was kind of saying before, if they have a strong Q1, that really sets the tone for Q2, 3, 4 for the years ahead. And also is the first Q1 where they have the PSA partnership. It's not completely make or break, right? It's not going to dramatically move the needle, but it will certainly boost the bottom line and boost the top line a little bit. But we should still expect revenue to go down as they close more unprofitable locations, more international locations. So I'm really looking at, what is EPS more than revenue? Because I do expect revenue to fall. I'm hoping revenue doesn't fall as much as analysts expect, which I think the analysts are over expecting to drop a little bit, potentially. I don't know. I got to kind of dig into that more, to be honest with you, before I say definitively what I think. But then with the EPS, I really want to see that positive. And also, how is the sale of Canadian operations going to factor into that, right? Because we saw back here, this guy, what's his name again? Canadian retailers, rebranding back to EV Games. This guy, Steven Tetrault, he bought out the Canadian business, so now they just got to sell off the French business, right? So they should get a one-time gain to some extent for that, but we'll see what the data shows. Excited for Tuesday? Yes, sir. Jackson's? Yes, sir. Me too. And by the way, I will be live, covering earnings live. Upon release, I'm going to start at 3:30 Eastern, cover them right as they come out at 4 o'clock, and we'll keep rocking and rolling from there. I sold calls on my shares once, but I don't like it. I stick to buying calls when they drive the IV down to selling when the IV cycle's up. Hey, that's totally fine. I'd rather be skiing. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in. I have 7 calls left from this cycle, so I might lose 1 or 2K total on them, but max already took 12K profit from the run-up. I have further out calls as well, but when IV is low, 50% area or less. Great point about the IV, because that's really the most optimal time to sell options when implied volatility is high. So, and kind of like you're describing, you're learning from your experience. It really depends, on what's best for you. And also, you got to learn from experience just with time. So I think that's great. Collecting premium is always nice. It's extra cash, gives you the ability to buy shares, sell future options, right? It really just gives you flexibility. And in a way, I was describing to someone who's, not that into the world of finance. Like, you could do that? I'm surprised. I'm like, yeah, no, these days, you could do almost anything. You could almost do too much, where people aren't experienced, and Robinhood and even Fidelity these days, right? Robinhood really changed the game. It used to be a lot harder to be able to sell options or do 4-leg options strategy, like the Iron Condor or the Butterfly, right? Those complicated ones that I don't mess with, where it's basically you're selling options or buying options, betting that it'll either stay within a certain price frame or go outside of it. But nowadays, because of Robinhood, right, they basically pioneered this where almost anyone can do anything. You just put, I have 5 years of options experience, this and that, and they just approve you and they just let you start doing this. So someone who's relatively newer to the investing game could start messing with all this stuff and then get burned really badly, right? Because they don't fully understand it. It used to not be like that. Because Robinhood became like that, basically Fidelity, Schwab, Interactive Brokers, all the other big dogs had to essentially kind of follow suit. So now it's really easy to do almost anything, right? So it's good and bad. And I would say, I'm a moderately experienced investor or in the market at this point, where I don't have as much experience as many others. I'm also not going to say I'm an amateur. I've been reading about different stuff since 2016, 17. But again, it's been a lot of learning and a lot of mistakes along the way. And something I've said many times, but I'll say it again because I think it's important. Start small if you're relatively newer. Don't ever put more than you can afford to lose or stress about, because if you're going to stress about it, you're going to make poor decisions. And for me, as a younger individual, when I first started, I was very fortunate. The money I was using originally was literally just from snow shoveling. Then it just became from like my job in high school and college. So I made all my silly mistakes. I messed with all the meme coins, the Forex, crypto day trading, options trading, all these trying to do all these complicated options buying strategies. I messed with all of that before I was really building myself up and having like significant income, right? So I was fortunate enough to make all my silly mistakes when I didn't have a lot of money to lose. So here we are today, but just trying to do all the little things right. And that's not to say I don't have more room for improvement, but also I always keep a solid emergency fund, try and always be liquid, because you always want to have cash available. Like for example, I was fortunate enough to have liquid cash available in April, and I was able to buy the dip in a fairly major way. Or I was like, okay, this seems way overblown. The fear greed index is in like mega fear. VIX is like insanely spiked up, right? Generally speaking, when the fear level, the fear greed index is like almost all the way at fear, and the VIX is really high. Generally speaking, right? It's not always as simple. It's a good dip buying opportunity for the market as a whole. Again, it's not always that simple, but just generally. And it's a good time to buy companies that you believe in, because also, given risk of recession, or looking at the risk of recession, great companies always make it out to the other side. So you might, I might buy this company, a recession might happen. Yeah, the value might go down. But if you own a great company, they'll have plans and a good management team to weather that storm and make it out the other side. And we get back to a bull market, it'll roar upwards. And I think that's the case with GameStop. And a lot of people don't realize that they're arguably one of the best, if not the best, companies to hold in a market crash scenario. Because yeah, it's like the stock price will start dropping, but it's like, okay, their balance sheet underlying will basically hold up the value. And then if it drops way down, institutions and individuals are going to be like, okay, well, they basically have this value on their balance sheet. Why would I not buy it? And they have positive EPS, positive operating free cash flow, positive net free total free cash flow, right? And if that's the case, it basically will hold the value as time goes on. And also, I think they realize like, okay, we want to use our cash to either make an acquisition and when I say acquisition, right, that's very general. Are they going to buy out companies? Are they going to invest in other companies, right? And the truth is we don't know, and that's kind of where the unknown is around GameStop. We can look at their, what is it over here? Their business strategy. It really under their business strategy is their investment policy. So our strategy involves our cash and sources of liquidity to maximize shareholder value, including through potential investment and/or acquisition opportunities, and optimizing our retail business to achieve profitability. And then you see everything else is under the investment policy. So I read that as we will optimize the retail business so it's always profitable. Otherwise, we'll just cut it out. We don't care how much the revenue falls on it. We always want it to be net profitable as long as time rolls on. And then we're going to make investments and/or acquisitions. And then what that entails is totally to be determined. But also, I would rather them not rush to use the cash. So I think they also understand, though, like, okay, cash does lose purchasing power as time goes on, right? Because it doesn't matter who's the president, who's in Congress, who's in what power. The United States of America always prints more money as time goes on. And it's just a snowball, right? Because we have more and more interest payments. So ultimately, I think they realize, like, okay, we want to use our cash to make this acquisition or a move, but we also don't want to rush because we don't want to overpay for something. However, we do understand our cash is losing purchasing power. So let's preserve some of that purchasing power by acquiring Bitcoin. And I think they realize, well, all these companies are becoming Bitcoin treasury companies, raising capital 0% rate. We could do the same, but we could just purely use the money we raised at the 0% interest rate. I think that's really what they're thinking right now. So they're kind of like, I don't want to say using it as like a loophole, but more like, okay, well, if people are willing to give us money for no interest to buy Bitcoin as kind of a hedge against currency like devaluing, like the US dollar just losing purchasing power and just devaluing as time rolls on, devaluing in the sense that it's losing purchasing power because of just endless printing of money, then yeah, we'll do that to kind of hedge against our cash, right? So that's what I kind of see where they're at right now. Let's see. I never touch my shares except for buying more. Hey, I'd rather be skiing. That's the way, right? Have you rolled your cash secured puts yet? Make no mistake, I have not. A couple times I've been thinking about it, but I've closed it and just sold the next one. So I guess essentially a couple times I have. But I've thought, next time, it's funny you say that there's a situation where I might get exercise. I might be better off just selling the next put, right? And that also keeps me in cash, kind of like I was saying. So I appreciate you reminding me of that because I haven't truly done it like in one transaction, but I've basically technically done it like closing one and then just opening the next one, right? So basically manually doing each one. Can do what I do, but sell puts instead of like you're doing. I just like keep it as simple as possible. Hey, nothing wrong with simple. By the way, it's taken 4 of the last 5 years to figure this out. I'm a slow learner, apparently. That's why I love owning solid dividend payers as part of my holdings. Exactly, I'd rather be skiing. Exactly. It's all about knowing yourself and just moving slowly, right? There's nothing wrong with moving slowly because the market moves so fast. There's always news every day, this happening, that get in this, get in that. It's so much noise. So it feels like you have to move fast, but really like the best thing to do I've found is just slow down, take a breath. And even when I'm like, should I sell this option? Should I sell that option? And there's been times like, wait, I feel like it's a busy day at work. I got some other things bouncing around in my skull. So I'm going to hold up for now. I'm going to hold up. And that's okay, right? That's okay. So sometimes making no move is the best move rather than rushing into a move that you think later, like, I wasn't thinking that one through. I have 1,000 shares of GameStop, but I'm looking at ChargePoint to swing trade. Ever looked into them? They have the most charging stations in the U.S. ChargePoint revenue is declining. Make no mistake. Thanks for being here. Rare View. Thanks for being here. So, I think it all comes down to your situation. What's best for you? Are you more of a trader, an investor? I'm generally familiar with ChargePoint, that it's one of the bigger names in the EV charging industry, but I feel like it's just honestly tough when they're competing with Tesla. So I know it's not exactly the same, but if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Tesla have the attachment piece where like you could basically use the Tesla charger for any car? So I feel like whenever you're competing with Tesla just with their large network, that's tough. And also I feel like they're really spending so much to expand right now, and that's why their operating profits, and I haven't looked in quite a while, but when I looked quite a while back, like when it was first coming out, it's like they were very much in the red because their general focus, and again, I haven't looked in recently, but I know their general focus was just trying to expand as much as possible, as fast as much as possible, just to get market share as people were buying EVs. So that's just a tough business model. If you're trading it short term, right? Let's pull it up for the fun of it. I think, sure, there could be opportunity, but I honestly don't go like short term trades. The only short term trades I'm doing are really just oh yeah, I think I saw it spiked a lot the other day, right? Like it had a good earnings report. But it is one of those, it's so low, there could be upside, but you always run the risk of when something's trading in the pennies like this after it was much higher in the past, that they could go through a reverse split. And, generally speaking, it's not that good. But let's see, EPS getting better. Yeah, so they're generally improving, right? A little bit, but I don't know. I think it's kind of a high risk, high reward play. If you have the stomach for that, right, you can tolerate that risk. Maybe there's an opportunity here, but truth be told, I'm not the right person to ask, to be honest. But you never know how it's going to shake out, right? Whether it's GameStop or any other stock in the short term, and that's why I generally like to focus on the long term. And I think there's investing and then there's trading. Both are okay, but it's just about determining like what type of individual are you. I was saying for a long time, after 2021, I'm just an investor. But really last year was like, okay, I don't want to actively trade, but I like the idea of selling options because you get the money market interest underneath on the puts. And you're also, time is on your side, right? When you're selling an option, time's on your side. When you're buying an option, you're fighting time, right? Because the stock can move sideways, you're going in the green if you're the option seller. If you're the buyer, you're going in the red, but the stock's moving sideways, right? So that's kind of just something to keep in mind. But yeah, Rare View, anytime. Appreciate you being here, my friend. But circling back to GameStop, they will have a lot of cash this quarter, right? So people will say, oh, haven't used their cash, kind of like we're saying before. But again, they haven't had it truly that long. And like talking before, like a market crash scenario, they have such a strong balance sheet that should generally hold up the value. But then they would also have the opportunity to buy out a company and then put it underneath their business. And then it's like, is it another gaming company? Is it a collectible-based company? Or is it like the Berkshire Hathaway type of approach, right? People calling it like GameShire Hathaway or GameShire Stop, something like GameShire Stopaway. That's what it was. Maybe it's that approach where it's like, okay, we like this business model. We like this company. While it's not directly with what we're doing, we'll make it part of our company as a whole, right? And it would be like GameStop Holding Company, GameStop, and then ABC Company 1, 2, 3, right? In theory. And then maybe one day they rename the overarching company like GME Holdings, something like that. And then GameStop's one aspect of the business. You have ABC company, XYZ company, Bitcoin, and they just kind of have all these different assets and become like a modern Berkshire Hathaway. So overall, really the possibilities are endless. And then like in a way, because the possibilities are endless, the risk and reward comes from that. And what I mean by that is like, how do I put this? The upside potential for GameStop comes because there's so many different ways this could go. And that's also the uncertainty that there's so many different ways this can go. So that's kind of really where the opportunity lies, that this could really go in a lot of different directions in terms of how their capital is utilized. And, for a long time, it was just kind of like, okay, what are they going to do? Yes, they're getting more profitable. They're steadily moving in the right direction, right? During this whole era here. I feel like right when they started issuing shares, that was the point where they're like, okay, the turnaround's complete. Let's start going on the attack. To an extent, right? That's just generally speaking. And of course, I'm not Larry Chang or Ryan Cohen. I don't know exactly. I'm not on the board of directors. I don't know if that's exactly the thought. But I feel like that was the general conception where they're like, okay, initially they sold shares back here, right? And that was to pay off all the old debt, completely strengthen the balance sheet, fix what was broken before Ryan Cohen and friends came aboard. And then over here it was, okay, let's just keep trimming the fat, getting rid of the excess, unprofitable parts of the business, and just improve e-commerce, fix all the little things that needed fixing, right? Because you have to realize a while back, they added something called, I think it's SAP, like retail technology, and it's basically just monitors like how much sells in what region, what store, basically data analytics for their business. And while you might think, well, every company has that, that's not remarkable. Yes, but the whole point is that like GameStop didn't have it. So they had to put all the right things in place to get the data to realize like, okay, these stores aren't operating well in this region. We have a lot of stores clumped up in this area, and all their sales are about break even. If we close one or two of those stores, it's going to theoretically drive people to the other stores, which is going to put them over the hump and make them profitable locations, right? So they did. I feel like they did all the little things through this period, and then right here, they're like, okay, we're going to raise cash and start making moves. And then we got CandyCon. We got some other in-house products that we started to see, right? Which, generally speaking, when you make your own product in-house, such as CandyCon, right? Here's when they came out with it back here. Let's see if I have a date on it. You're going to make more margins on that. So do we have any dates? Oh, yeah. And then Yobik, right? Another small thing. Basically, to connect the ecosystem of 3,000 stores and distribution centers, also connects enterprise and headquarters. And essentially, it's like their own ChatGPT in-house where it's like, what is the return policy on this? And basically, employees can ask you. I don't know if it's specifically like ChatGPT, but it's basically they're able to create their own database within. So they were doing all these little things, and then they're like, okay, now let's start selling private label brands. Let's do CandyCon. I like to see them do more private label brands, to be honest. I've seen, like, they did the controller, they did Mod Retro, right? They did some of these different things, and then ultimately doing the PSA collab, and then prices went up, right? As we see here, it went from this pricing to this pricing. So it feels like they just slowly shifted from like, okay, we're fixing everything to, I don't want to say attack, like they've done this like major move in any way or any particular thing, but like, okay, we're going to start creating our own in-house products. We're going to get involved with PSA, and now we're going to just stack a bunch of cash and wait for the right opportunity to pounce. And that's where I feel like where we are at today. And what I was kind of just saying, let's see, Max Payne, all around 29.30, right around where we're trading this week, right? You could see that definitely change next week, though. I feel you got to take that with a grain of salt. It's funny, though, how a lot of times, right, GME closes so within $1 of Max Payne, right? Where was it? I just had it over here. And also, by the way, when they sold their shares, look how fast they sold them each time. Yes, the stock was pretty volatile in that period, but they sold so many shares so quickly all 3 times, right? So here they sold it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total trading days, 3 total trading days, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they announced it was complete. It was probably more complete back here, so like in 8 or 9 trading days. So they always sold them relatively quick, and that was, by the way, $3.4 billion on the sale of 140 million shares when you work it all out. And it was at prices, for the most part, around where we are, or a little bit lower, but I digress. Completely going off track here. But what I'm trying to say is they've done all the little things right. They're starting to move in the right direction. And then now with Bitcoin, right? I'm a Bitcoin bull. When I saw this picture of them, I knew. And you go back on my Twitter, I tweeted it back at some point that I thought they could buy Bitcoin. It was a possibility and it made sense for them. And ultimately they did, right? I didn't necessarily know they were going to do the private note offering, right? The convertible note offering. But as I've kind of seen it play out, like my thought is, and I was just saying this a little bit before, is that they were like, okay, well, all these Bitcoin treasury companies can raise capital at 0% interest rate. Why can't we? And we want to hold our cash, have it ready to go to buy something out or make the next big move when the time comes, but we don't want to rush it. But we also understand cash is losing purchasing power as time rolls on, and the United States just always prints money. That's just how it goes. So our purchasing power is going to get diminished. So why not raise capital at a 0% rate and then go buy Bitcoin with that capital? And with that being said, you can say, oh, well, 4,710 Bitcoin is only about 500 million. I think they're going to deploy that other 1 billion to buy Bitcoin over the next couple quarters. That's kind of my opinion throughout the back half of this year. I feel like sooner is better than later, just because I feel like more and more people are just waking up to the realization of Bitcoin. And this whole Elon and Trump thing, right? So dramatic. It's really like a high school like Twitter argument. That's really what it looks like to me. But I don't know if you heard the breaking news. They settled their wild feud. They came to agreement that GameStop is the best place to buy the Switch to. GameStop cures all, right? But in all seriousness, what they're arguing about is the U.S. deficit and the money being created. And whether you look at the left or the right, they all print money, right? They always print money, or they always create money. They always want to spend to push their own agenda or fulfill their own agenda, however you want to look at it. And Congress is always going to approve it. So we always run a deficit, right, for a very, very long time. And inevitably, there's not always going to be enough treasury buyers out there. So inevitably, the Fed buys. And how does the Fed get money? Fire up the money printer, brrr, right? And that's just how it goes. So I think they realize, okay, we don't want to rush to use our cash, but also our cash loses purchasing power. So why not borrow it at a 0% rate that we can convert into shares and then buy Bitcoin with that to preserve value on our balance sheet if cash devalues over time. And then, hey, Bitcoin goes through a crazy period where it really doesn't do too much. So be it. But I think they're slowly becoming orange-pilled, so to speak, where like they're understanding this, whether it's like Ryan Cohen, Larry Chang, Alan Adel. I think all of them are kind of coming to this realization. It's like, okay, you need cash on the balance sheet for opportunity and you don't want to rush it. But also we understand like it will lose its purchasing power over time. So let's hold Bitcoin to essentially hedge against that. And that's kind of what Ryan Cohen mentioned in his most recent interview. I've seen the growth of trading card inventory on the site, 953 products now, 5,898 grading calls now too, or I think you meant cards, but yeah, that's a great point as well. It seems like there's more and more, and in a way, right, I was just saying this to someone today. So I've started to collect a bunch of cards. By the way, low-key so disappointed, not in GameStop, but in PSA. These both came back 9s. I literally took them right out. They look like in perfect condition. How are they 9s? That's the tough part about PSA, man. Like, you'd have the nicest, most pristine card, and hell, come back a 9. I just pulled an amazing hockey card that if it's a 10, it's worth like $400. I'm probably going to keep it because it's a stud rookie, this guy, Lane Hudson. But I don't even know if it's going to get a 10. I was so careful taking it out. I literally used gloves. I immediately put it in the sleeve, the semi-ridge holder, whatever it's called. But I hope it comes back a 10. But regardless, right, I got all these different cards here. I got these ones I got them graded. And it's been a smooth process through GameStop, especially as a casual collector like myself. But I look at it as like, these are assets for myself. These are honestly like alternative assets. And in a way, it's GameStop's alternative asset, because if the cards don't sell right away, they're going to hold their value pretty decently and generally speaking go up, right? Of course, it depends. If you get a certain player who falls off, no one cares about, that's not as ideal, right? But generally like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, trading card games are going to hold value better. And that's also mostly what they're doing. For me personally, I'm mostly into sports cards, but that's just me. But generally, I feel like the trading card games, the TCG, is really what they're primarily having in stock and more generally relates to their business. So in a way, it's like an alternative asset. So you could already kind of argue they have GameStop as the core business. They have Bitcoin as an alternative asset, and then they have the trading cards as alternative assets, right? And then let's say they acquire something else, and then that becomes part of their business. It's kind of like a fourth avenue of business, and they're kind of becoming that overarching entity that's just holding different things. And again, these are just all different ideas bouncing around in my skull right now. So I'm just a guy on the internet. You never know what's going to truly happen, right? So please don't ever hear anything I say and go, oh, Tetron said this, Tetron said that, it means this, it means that. And those of you who know me know I'm against the tinfoil right now. I've had just about enough. Just about enough, because if I see one more thing about Greg and his hot dogs and being Roaring Kitty, I'm going to rip my hair out of my head. But listen, it's fine. You could speculate. It's the internet. People are going to do that. But I just feel like at this point, it's like, why look at all that? Why not just keep following the company? And I guess it's fun. There's not always all this news coming out of the company. But it just kind of irks me when it's like, I feel like people on the outside looking in are like, in the sense, like, not truly closely following the GameStop story, just assume every GameStop investor is crazy because that's what they see pop up in their feed. Those are somehow the things that always get the most likes. It almost makes me feel like bad actors are like pushing those agendas, but there's definitely regular people who believe some of these like crazy tinfoil theories. And listen, if you want to believe that, it's fine. I can't stop you, right? I'm just saying what I think. So please don't hate me. If you do, so be it. Thanks for being here anyway. But I feel like, I don't know, to me, as someone who's followed the story for a long time, held shares for a long time, I'm like, I don't care about all these speculative dates and this means this. The numbers in Roaring Kitties, he posted this, the Time magazine, because of this date, correlates with Greg's username and the numbers in it. And that one time he posted a hot dog with his golf club. Like, it just hurts my brain, right? But again, it is what it is. It's fine. I'm not going to go, I guess I was going to say I'm not going to go on Twitter rip people apart about it, but you could say, oh, you're saying it here. But I'm just saying what's on my mind, right? I feel like there's got to be balance in the universe, right? There's some people over speculative. I'm like at the point now where I'm like anti-speculative. That's not the right way to put it because I'm speculating on the future of GameStop, but in the sense of like, all right, let's just focus on the core numbers. Someone's got to do that, right? I'm not saying I'm the only one doing that, but I think you guys get what I'm saying. I got a grade 5, lol. That's my bad. Oh, no, you're good. And yeah, make no mistake, that's what happens sometimes. Like, I sent in this Russell Wilson card, it got a grade 5. But I expected that because it was just a card I had from when I was a kid. I think I literally ripped it out of like a Sports Illustrated magazine or something like that. I don't even remember where I got it, to be honest. And he was a quarterback of the Steelers. I'm a Steelers fan last year. So, he was quarterback of the Steelers last year. I'm still a Steelers fan. Got Rodgers. Pretty crazy. Hope it goes well. But yeah, that's just me. See, I really don't appreciate, I really don't pay attention much to the hype anymore. Agreed, man. Agreed. It's like, it's fine if it entertains you, but if you're genuinely going to make decisions and like buy options off of the hype, like, I can't give you financial advice, but historically speaking, it has not gone well. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So sending off a grade 5 to get graded is a flex. Yeah, listen, do less. Honestly, the reason I did my grade 5s are the ones, I'll show you the ones I've sent to get graded, right? I'll talk you through my GameStop journey with the cards here. And again, it's been a smooth process for me. As someone who's a very casual collector, it's perfect because I just want to get involved in it. And I was really hoping, so these are my most recent ones. I was really hoping these came back as 10s, right? Got annoying sun reflection, but this guy, Connor Bedard, is an absolute stud. This isn't the rarest of cards, but I liked it, and I feel like he's such a good player. Could have some upside in the long run, so I figured to get it graded. Young Guns are rookie cards for hockey. So, this glare is literally so annoying. But yeah, Matt Rempe, it's like a tough guy. I'm a Devils fan, so low-key, I was like, really, this is the card I got? I was hoping it was a 10 so I could sell it for a decent amount, but it's not worth as much as the 9. But then the other ones I sent in, right? These ones, like, I bought from GameStop, and what I do is, like, I bought this Jamar Chase. Sorry, the reflection's literally so annoying because he's a beast. I think he's arguably the best in the game, probably just behind Justin Jefferson. What I do is the day I buy it, I put the dollar amount and the day I bought it. That's how I keep track of it. So I'll give you you know what? We're running through it. Here's my collection. Why not? Got Macklin Celebrini. He's a beast. Right after I bought this, the value went up. So I was like, sick. He was the first overall pick this past draft in the NHL. Big hockey guy. $50. Not bad. It's already worth more. But some other ones I sent in here. These 4. So I sent Russell Wilson. And these 4 I'm showing you right now are the first 4 I put in. So I just wanted to try them. And again, he was a quarterback of the Steelers last year. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame, so I was like, why not? And it's a rookie card. This is the one I was most excited about. So I just wanted to test the process, right? Jesper Bratt, signed card, one of my favorite players on the Devils, gold foil, PSA 10. And this one I bought on eBay like years and years ago. in like a 3-pack of Just for Rat cards. So shout out to whoever I bought it from because they kept it in pristine condition. So I was lucky enough to get a 10. And then I found these old Pokemon cards. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if they were going to come back being real because I remember trading with some kids at a summer camp many moons ago. So I was like, are they fake? I literally don't even know. I just know they're like old school cards. So why not try and get them graded? Like if this Steelix one was like a 10, it's literally worth like a K. It's crazy. But fortunately, it's a 3. But if you look at the pack, you can see it's literally all destroyed. Like it's all messed up. But again, I was just trying it out. And then Bulbasaur, I like that Pokemon. So I'm like, why not? Then we got Garrett Wilson. He's a beast. We got Justin Jefferson. I think he's the best in the game. Only $22 for that one. Fortunately, a 9. But then this is a big one. See, I got this one a long time ago. This is the card I've held the longest. Aaron Judge. Only $36. I bought it all the way back in 2020. And then I got TJ Stroud, Justin Herbert. And that's my graded collection. But really, you know, the oldest card I have is Aaron Judge ones. I had other ones in the past and I sold them off. I used to kind of do the buying and selling thing, like back actually when everything was shut down. That's really when I got into it. So as you can see, I literally bought this card actually right before everything shut down because it was early March. But that's the time I was getting into it. So I was playing the trading card game, like buying and selling, and I kept Aaron Judge one because I'm like, how is this one so cheap? And he's literally like an up-and-coming superstar. It might have been like his rookie year. No, it wasn't his rookie year. His rookie year was 2017. But overall, I was like, all right, why not? And then GameStop getting involved in them kind of renewed my interest again. Like it was always on my radar, but I kind of like just stopped doing it. But now, see, like I got like all these hockey cards here too. Got a whole bunch of different cards, right, that are pretty neat. Another rookie card, but this guy is still in the minors, so I'm hoping he comes up, plays well. His card could go up in value, right? But yeah, that's my journey with GameStop. So GME price prediction. Thank you guys. Appreciate the nice comments. Do less, make no mistake. Appreciate you being here. Angel Mansa Musa Perez. Thanks for being here as well. GME price prediction. I don't like to honestly give price predictions because you just don't know what's going to happen. That's what I was kind of saying before. It could go up, it could go down, like any other stock, right? And especially with GameStop, you just don't truly know with this company. You just don't know. You literally just don't know more than any other company because I feel like every time it feels like it's moving one direction, it moves the other. My kind of gut feeling, and I was saying this a little bit earlier, is that the market's looking for them to buy a lot of Bitcoin because of the convertible note offering. So I feel like even if they have really strong EPS, let's say they come in with like 12 cents of EPS, which I think would be great. Analysts, there's only 2 analysts covering GameStop. One estimates $0 of EPS, exactly 0, break even. The other one estimates 8 cents. Say they come in at 12, 13 cents per share, even 15 cents, and revenue doesn't decline as much as expected. I could still see the stock price falling because then the headlines will be, oh, well, they didn't buy more Bitcoin yet. They don't provide guidance on when they're going to, guidance in general, or shedding any light on when they're going to buy Bitcoin. So I feel like unless they mention Bitcoin in some way or they bought more Bitcoin, I almost am starting to think that the price is going to go down to like 25 or something, right? So I guess you could say that's my prediction, but I honestly hope I'm wrong. And I certainly could be wrong, right? But at the same time, on the other side of the coin, if let's say EPS is worse than expected, it comes in at like negative 3 cents per share, which would, by the way, still be an improvement year over year because their EPS last year was like negative 11 cents. Say it comes in at negative 3 cents, revenues a little bit, what dropped even a little bit more than expected. But they say, oh, we just bought another $500 million of Bitcoin yesterday, right before the report. I think that the market would love that. It would go up. So I feel like as of now, the market's still trying to treat it like a Bitcoin treasury company, but I just don't think that's the case. I think Bitcoin's becoming part of what they're doing, but I don't think they're going the route of being a pure Bitcoin play. But again, just a guy on the internet, so you don't know, right? You don't know. I don't know. Nobody truly knows. And that's why we just got to digest the numbers when they come out, which, if you missed it, I will be live for this upcoming earnings report. June 10th, starting 3:30 Eastern. And then I'll be covering the numbers live upon release at 4 p.m. And by the way, no conference call. Someone always asks that every time during the live stream of the actual earnings. Is there a conference call? They don't do a conference call. That's just how they do it. And I understand some people are like, that's crazy. Why would you not? But GameStop's made it abundantly clear to me that they're like, we're going to do what we think is the best, and we're going to say the least amount possible. If you don't like that, sorry, so be it. And that's just the way she goes, right? That's just the way GameStop goes. And I really think, it's funny, sometimes when I'm talking and like explaining all this stuff, I'm kind of giving myself new ideas in real time. And I love when you guys throw things in the chat too, because it also gives me other ideas. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it like that. But I really feel like they're going with the approach of like, okay, don't believe us, just watch. And for investors, right, that's like where the opportunity lies, that it could go any direction, right? The uncertainty and the opportunity is kind of what gives GameStop's stock a lot of value to me in the long term, because I feel like people are like, oh, I don't know which direction this is going to go. Are they going to buy more Bitcoin? Are they going to acquire things? What are they going to do? We don't know. I don't know. I want to know before I buy more shares. But I feel like that's where you get the potential upside, because if it works out, as I believe it will, in terms of just continuing to create shareholder value, as they mention as like their primary goal in their investment policy here, right? Where is it? I got to sort this out before the next earnings. In their updated policy, right? Notice their business strategy just says involves our cash and other sources of liquidity, such as convertible notes, to maximize shareholder value, including through potential investment and or acquisition opportunities, and optimizing our retail business to achieve profitability. And then they go into all the details of the investment policy. So to me, it really says like, okay, we're going to use our capital as we see fit, and you'll have to just trust us. And people might think, that's crazy. What? What do you mean? But that's where the upside lies, because if it works out, and again, as I believe it will, and I believe in the management team to execute accordingly, slowly but steadily, then there will be a lot of upside, because like, oh, wow, yeah, this is actually working out great. But the people who are unsure, right, or the market in general is like, oh, what are they doing with this money, right? What are they doing? And what's holding back, like the average individual who doesn't know that much about GameStop, isn't truly closely following the story, from buying, is that they're like, well, I don't know. Are they going to buy more Bitcoin? Are they going to acquire another company? Are they going to acquire various assets, various cryptocurrencies? I just don't know. I can't buy this. So I feel like that's kind of like, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but that's really where like the gap is, in the sense of like opportunity. And that's really where I think the upside is, that the markets doesn't know how to quite price this thing, because we just don't know what's going to happen. So it's almost like the unknown is what gives them the upside. And again, I think you really, to be in this stock, and to be perfectly clear, if I didn't believe in the management team, I wouldn't hold shares. And that's in general for any company I own, right? Like I've been buying AMD recently, right? I've started buying in about February, and I've been consistently buying, kind of toning it back now that it's been moving up a little bit. I got a nice little chunk of shares that I'm kind of happy with for the time being, but still doing DCA, just a little bit each week, very small amount, but slowly building into it. But I love AMD's management team. I think Lisa Su has consistently executed, and they've been evolving and preparing for the next chapter of AI. And part of it really is, obviously, could go on a whole talk about AMD, and I'm continuing to read and learn about it as well. But really, the thing for AMD is what I see them primarily focusing on is efficient energy use, because that's becoming a major issue. All these data centers are using up so much energy. So really, companies are going to want energy efficient options. So AMD is really trying to produce like energy efficient chips. It's not that plain and simple. And also, I think people say, "Oh, Nvidia is the king of the industry." Okay, sure, but you think companies are going to buy more or less semiconductor chips over the next few years from now? So I feel like even if Nvidia continues to thrive, I think AMD still has more upside than Nvidia, because one, I think they'll catch up a little bit, and two, I think that market as a whole is growing, and AMD will absolutely capture some of that. But I digress. There's some quick thoughts on AMD. Do you think we could see another corporate note offering? Honestly, make no mistake, I don't think so, just because they haven't used that full 1.5 billion. It's certainly possible, right? I don't think you can completely rule it out, but I feel like unless we find out, hey, they use that because they raised 1.5 billion, right? Keep in mind when you look at the news releases. So they priced a private offering, and then they had the extra 200 million, right? Because they got or approximately 1.48 billion if the initial purchaser exercised its option to purchase the additional notes. So they upsized the offering. That did in fact happen. So 1.5 billion in cash they raised, based on how much Bitcoin they bought, right? About 4,710. That equates to, right, assuming they bought around 105,000, right, which we don't know for sure, so that is worth keeping in mind. Only about 500 million, right? So they used only about 1/3 of what they raised from that convertible note offering. So I feel like probably not, and I feel like since they just raised that from the convertible note offering, the 1.5, why would they issue shares, right? People are like, oh, what if they issue shares? Again, it's always all possible, but I just feel like given that they haven't used up that 1.5 billion yet for Bitcoin, I just don't really see them doing that. But again, you never know because they might have other plans that we don't quite know about. Appreciate this Tetron. Hey, I appreciate you being here. I love the story. I love covering it and just sharing what I think. So yeah, here we are. GameStop, they work hard so we don't have to. Hey, Mike, hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in, my friend. But yeah, and again, I really think like the uncertainty surrounding it is really what gives the upside opportunity for the company as time rolls on. And I'll continue to ride it out because, hey, I just like the stock. Long GameStop RC, hey, you said it, not me. That's how it goes, right? But, oh man, I'm so curious what earnings are. Last earnings report, I was literally sick as a dog. Like, I took off the day from work, and I was, okay, I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to start the stream early. And I felt like complete crap. My throat was hurting so much. Thankfully, I wasn't like losing my voice, but I was like, I literally took off. And everyone's watching for the earnings report. I got to stream, so I did it anyway. So, should be in better health, knock on wood for this earnings report. So I'm going to be rocking and rolling literally as long as I can until like I'm absolutely exhausted and can't stream anymore. Like I'll try and stream all the way till 6, 7 p.m. We'll see how long I go. Because it's just the most eyes at that time and the most up-to-date information. It's a big deal, the earnings report. We only get one of those, every 4. We only get 4 of those every year. So you really want to digest and see the numbers. And also, regardless of what the numbers are, I think it's worth keeping in mind that you're going to see it right away and think, oh my God, this, oh my God, that, oh my gosh, so good, oh my gosh, so bad, right? Whatever it may be, you're going to have emotions and different thoughts on it. But just keep in mind, like, you might feel differently in a day or two. How many times in the past has there been a situation like, oh my gosh, they're offering shares, what the heck? Oh, okay, I see why they were doing it. Why are they doing convertible note offering? Oh, okay, the price started coming back. So just understand, no matter what happens, you're going to, like, we're emotional creatures as humans, so you're going to think this, think that, but like I would suggest, of course, I don't give advice. Try not to make any like very rash moves, very quick and sudden moves. Try and just kind of let the dust settle, think on it, digest it a little bit, no matter what it is, right? Because there's always so much different opinions coming out at that time. A lot of different numbers to look at, right? Remember I was covering last earnings report. I was going through all the numbers and then the chat was going crazy. Like everyone was like, yo, they bought Bitcoin. They're going to buy Bitcoin. They updated the investment policy to buy Bitcoin. They're saying they're going to buy Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, wait, what? I didn't even see that yet. So I totally missed it. So you got to take some time to digest and observe. So just kind of keep that in mind. But one other quick thing I do want to point out, you look at their balance sheet right here. This was last year, but look at their current assets to current liabilities. So this has continued to improve. So their current liabilities, right, at the same time last year was 848 million versus current assets of 1.8 billion. So that's a current ratio of like 2 point something, right? But as of right now, it will be much higher. So current assets to current liabilities is the current ratio. So it's basically how many times over could they pay off their current liabilities with the current assets. And by the way, current means within a 1 year period or year or less. It's a current asset. Oh, I guess quick side note check. Did Robinhood get added to the S&P? I figured they would. Did they not? Well, I don't think they did. If they're trending and the stock's trading down, I think that means the markets, because the markets are pricing in them being added to the S&P 500. So I guess they didn't get added. Damn, I didn't realize how much of a tear they've been on. I knew they were going up, but yeah, so they must have not been added, I'm guessing, given that the stock's down after hours. The market was expecting them to be added. I saw a lot of people talking about it, but I'm sure they will be, honestly, at some point. They're just getting too big not to be honest with you. And then look at GameStop's current ratio. Where is it? Everything's moving. 8.05. That's insane. That means they could pay for all their current liabilities with their current assets, right? Most of it being cash, 8 times over. That's actually insane. Like, and it's maybe even going to be bigger this quarter. Like, that's unheard of. Like, let's look at another one I can think that has a strong current ratio. Palantir. Theirs was like 6 or 7 when I last looked. Jeez, what the heck? Where's theirs? 6.49, right? So theirs is pretty strong. But GameStop's is even stronger, right? And then you look at their most recent earnings. Let's see. Fourth quarter. So let's see, balance sheet. Get the calculator up. So current assets, they had 5.3. And keep in mind, this was before raising 1.5 billion, and we know about 500 million. We're guesstimating, right? Was used towards Bitcoin. We don't know that for sure. So 5.3 divided by current liabilities. Whoa, I did it wrong. So 5.3 billion divided by, if we're doing, well, I guess, you know what? We'll just do the full numbers. Make it a little cleaner. So 5355 divided by 665.4. Boom. That's where the 8.04 comes from, right? So sometimes it's nice to double check what Yahoo Finance has. They do pull from the most recent earnings report, but you do want to kind of double check just for your own due diligence. Yahoo Finance is great at a glance of a company. I always go to that tab as you see, like statistics. You get a good glance over of what everything looks like, but you do want to look into it more in detail, right? Because for GameStop, for example, right? You look at it, you go, oh, they have debt? What the heck is that? And then you realize, you look at their actual numbers, you're like, oh, most of that is really their operating lease liabilities. So it's not really debt, right? Or you look down here, their long-term liabilities, their operating lease liabilities is really their long-term liabilities. So it's 410 million. But really, they really don't really have any debt, right? They have 6.6 million at this point. The long-term debt, which by the way has an interest rate of like under 1%, and it's a loan from the French government associated with like the response to the pandemic. So it's literally next to nothing, and that's about to be completely wiped off, by the way. But let's assume, right, for this quarter, let's assume total current liabilities is exactly the same as last quarter, which I think it might even be a little bit less. But then you take the 5355, the 5.3 billion of current assets, add the 1.5 billion, right, that they raised, or let's say after it was really like 1.498. So let's say 1.45 billion, right? Just to account for like fees associated with it and a little bit of the difference. Then divide that by 665.4. It's insane. That's an insanely strong balance sheet. A current ratio of 10. Does anyone else know of any other companies with a current ratio like that? That's nuts. So just something to keep in mind. And then even just looking at total assets to total liabilities, right? So the non-current assets, you have 5.875 billion of total assets divided by total liabilities, and this is in last quarter. They could use their assets to cover all of their liabilities 6 times over. And really, it's because they have a ton of stockholder equity. They just continued to build that up. And by the way, if you weren't aware, one of the most basic equations in like counting, one of the first things they taught me in like college, right? Learned a few things there, tried to. But honestly, most of my investment knowledge I learned on my own. But one thing they did teach right off the bat was like liabilities plus stockholders' equity equals total assets, right? So that's why these two added up equals this, which is always equal to this. And you can see the same here. I'm sure most of you know that, but just in case you didn't, I always like to help everyone learn and improve little by little. But assuming this quarter, right, they raised all that cash, they used some of it towards Bitcoin. So now you take 5875.4, you add 1.5 billion, or what did we say before? We did 1.45. Add that together, divide it by 945.6 total liabilities. They can cover their assets over almost 8 times over with they cover their liabilities with their assets almost 8 times over. So that's what when people say, oh, or I say they have a really strong balance sheet, or you hear people say GameStop has a remarkable balance sheet. This is why. This is why, because they can cover all of their liabilities. So yes, the revenue falling situation is not the most ideal, but EPS is trending up, and they continue to raise capital and just boost stockholder equity and ultimately strengthen the balance sheet and have that opportunity, really have that opportunity. And, part of it's cards, part of it's Bitcoin, and part of it is probably a few other things that we don't know about that maybe they don't even know exactly what they're going to do yet, right? That's going to kind of shake out over the next couple of years. And that's really a summary of why I continue to hold the stock. I think it's an incredible story. I love the journey, right? But I'm not just going to hold the stock because of emotions. But I look at these underlying numbers and I'm like, okay, they're in good financial standing. It's going to move like this and that. And that's also why I feel comfortable selling options, because when you're going to sell options, right, you do have to believe in the underlying company. You can't just go sell options on a really volatile pharmaceutical company, because if that company goes bankrupt, you're ultimately going to get burned, right? So all just food for thought there. All just food for thought. But there's no interest on the debt, so I'm hoping I'm doing another 1.5 billion. So yeah, exactly. Make no mistake, exactly. Because it's 0% interest, so be it. If they want to do more, fine by me. I was hoping they'd put a full 1 billion in Bitcoin. Honestly, I'd rather be skiing. I kind of want them to do more sooner too, because I really do think like it's going to move up, because you just see more and more institutions, even JP Morgan's allowing their clients. And just when you realize that, especially with the big, beautiful bill, the big, grand, fantastic, beautiful, wonderful, whatever bill is being passed, which is just more spending, right? A ton more spending. And Elon's like, hey, literally offsetting Doge. I can't do an Elon impression, but I think I can do a Trump one. We need this bill. It's a great bill. It's a beautiful bill. What a bill, right? But my point is, they're going to spend a lot of money, and ultimately, it's going to devalue the dollar, right? In the sense of purchasing power will decrease for average individuals. It won't be tomorrow, but it's just something that continues to happen over time, and it accelerates every time we spend more. The deficit gets deeper. So when you realize that, it's like, why would you not want to own Bitcoin, right? And then to people that totally are against Bitcoin, I say, okay, at least own a little bit of gold, right? But how much upside are you really going to get in gold versus Bitcoin? Nowhere near the same, right? Yes, you're going to have to stomach the volatility, but for that reason, I do want them to get more involved in Bitcoin. And then I'm okay with them though, easing into it, but it's like, don't wait too long, but get a good chunk, and then slowly DCA over time. Maybe not exactly like on a weekly basis, but just slowly build into it with additional capital raised for that 0% interest. And keep in mind, they have a lot more shares outstanding. So this is, they went from 305 to 394 after the 3 share offerings they did last year, but they're going to be up to 1 billion in shares outstanding, right? That was voted on a couple annual reports ago. They could be up to 1 billion shares outstanding. So you do have to consider they can't just issue 406 million right now and get to that exact number. Reason being is the convertible notes, those are counted as like diluted shares, right? So again, I was saying a little bit earlier how it's going to affect the EPS. So you do just have to keep in mind, that the convertible notes, technically, sort of, it's dilution, right? People are like, oh, dilution when they did the convertible note offering. Well, like 0% interest. It's literally free money, right? Not literally, there's no such thing as free lunch, right? But they do have to account for that in their diluted total. But my point is, yes, they could do another convertible note offering. They could issue more shares. They could go all the way up to the point that it's 1 billion total. But as long as, they're utilizing that capital in an efficient way, earning interest for the time being in between, buying some Bitcoin, I like the direction they're going. You think there's a Unity U and GME connection acquisition possible? I got to be honest, Matt. I don't think so, right? I don't know a whole lot about you, but I've just seen so many distraction things, stocks come and go. Like, look, what does you exactly even do? I just honestly feel like it's just another load of baloney. Sure, maybe Roaring Kitty is buying it, trading it, right? We saw that with Chewy. He got in and then he got right out. Still don't even know. Kind of forgot about that until now. But I just don't really see the play here, right? And it looks like they're losing a lot of money at this time. Their operating margins looking really rough. It's not impossible, right? Nothing's ever impossible, but I just don't really see that being the case. I feel like it's just another, like, I don't want to say distraction, but just another, like, oh, this because of that, because of this. I was saying earlier, I'm so over like the over speculation. And listen, it's fine to speculate. It's the internet. I can't control what people say and think. But I feel like just over speculation where if you're believing it because you saw that this connects with Greg and this, it's like you got to take a step back. Not saying that's necessarily what you're saying here, but I just feel like so numb to any like ideas that just start being spread like wildfire that don't really have any true merit to them. So I'm going to say no, but I'm not going to say, oh, it's absolutely impossible, right? But for me, I'll just look at the numbers when they come out. The report when it comes out, they report on some kind of acquisition. I'll dive right into it, get all the details on it. And that's just how I rock and roll. Operating leases weren't considered asset liabilities before 2020. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, I'd be kind of interested to go back and look and see how that kind of changes over time. Patrick, Tetrinator, what up, what up? Thanks for being here, man. I got the Trump impression. I hope you guys like that. That's actually pretty good. Thank you, Doulas. You're a great guy. Fantastic guy. I'd rather be skiing. He loves skiing. He's the best skier. Nobody skis like that guy. No, I'm doing it for fun, but just here and there, Not too much. Too much is not good. But honestly, my inspiration comes from Shane Gillis. I think he does it hilariously. Like when I went on vacation with my friends, we were watching the Kill Tony episode where he went on there and did that, and we were just cracking up. Like we thought it was the funniest. Like Elon, he's gonna sniff him out like a retarded truffle pig, or they were saying something hilarious on there. Like, oh my god, so funny. But oh man, it's the weekend. Exciting. I feel like you don't want to live for the weekend, right? You don't want to live for the weekend. But at the same time, gotta get happy when it's the weekend, right? Why not? I work, through the week, Monday through Friday. So I come home right after, do the stream Friday. Then my weekend starts, right? And speaking of the weekend and hobbies, hockey tonight. Ryan, if you're here, bro, I know you're watching the game tonight. Let's go Oilers. Connor McDavid needs a cup. I would love to get a Connor McDavid card, but those go for a ton because he is very, very good at hockey. Those of you that don't know. But basically, Oilers versus Panthers, rematch. Oilers won game one, but can they win again tonight? And game one was such a good game. It was actually such an exciting game, just as a hockey fan. I'm a Devils fan, hence why I got the Jesper Bratt card. But you never know what's going to happen with hockey, right? So I'm very excited for that game tonight. I'm fired up. Going to make some nice old fashions, kind of chill. Smoked old fashioned, that's kind of my vibe, so... They're eating the dogs, Sergio. I heard that. It's crazy. They might even be eating the cats. Don't touch my fish. I love my fish. Nobody can touch my fish. I think you've been practicing that impression. Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. Make no mistake. You might not be making a mistake there. You might be right. You might be right. On occasion, you're right. Nobody's right like me. That was the presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you. Angel. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it. Eating the dogs, eating the cats. Yeah, hockey. Oof. Out of the league with that. No, yeah. Populous. Yeah. Listen, I feel like in this world, you gotta laugh at everything. You gotta laugh at everything, right? Whether you love or hate the guy, you just gotta laugh. You just gotta laugh, right? But yeah, honestly, I understand hockey's not for everyone, but I really encourage anyone that's a casual fan or just a sports fan in general, just go to a hockey game. I'm telling you, it's such an amazing experience. The people are awesome. You could sit almost anywhere in most stadiums and still have a great seat. And people, it's hard to follow the puck. But you have to just kind of follow where the players are going, if that makes sense. Because if you look where the players are looking, that kind of leads you to the puck. I guess it's easy to say because I've watched for a long time. But I get it. It's not for everyone. I'm also a big football guy, as you saw with the cards. But I'm telling you, go to a game if you get a chance. Go to a game. The in-person experience is awesome. It's absolutely awesome. You won't regret it, I promise. But maybe I'll check out a game one day. Hey, yeah, if you're doing nothing tonight, you could watch the Stanley Cup Final. Just throw it on. If you're doing something else, that's what I do sometimes too. I'm a hockey junkie. I've watched almost all the playoffs, but what I'll do is when it's the Devils, I am like this. I had friends over who were not a lot of my close friends love hockey, right? So I was come watch the game with me, but then they were just talking, and I was like, stop talking, the game's on, right? I'm so locked in, I'm stressed out. And by the way, Devils were up 3-0 in the game. They got eliminated, and they ultimately lost 5-4 in overtime. So that was brutal and upsetting. But the other games, I'm all right, I'll casually put it on, do something else on the side, maybe looking at some balance sheets or whatever, then just kind of have the game on the side. Something exciting happens, right? But yeah, Devils got to improve a little bit before next year. They got some holes to fill, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, that's really what I got for the earnings preview. Again, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to do another preview either Sunday night. I think Monday night's going to be the best move. I'm thinking Monday around 7 p.m. Stay tuned, though. Follow me on X if you don't already. That's where I always tweet out when I'm doing my streams at Tetron Invest. Be sure to follow for updates. And then definitely on the earnings day, I will be covering live. 3:30, those first 30 minutes in, build the anticipation, think about it a little bit. Speculate a little bit, right? Not too much. Just look at what the numbers might be. And then cover the numbers live upon release and any news or whatever may come, right? So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to stay tuned. But also, I encourage people, don't think too hard about stocks over the weekend, investments. Do your research on the weekends if that's the time you do it. But don't strain yourself too much. I think really sometimes when you're thinking so much about my allocation of funds, my how cash heavy am I? What should my next move be? Like, what trade am I trying to make? What frequency am I trying to invest? Whenever I'm thinking about that stuff too much to the point where I'm like, I can't make the right decision right now. I can't think clearly. The best thing I feel like you can do is just step away and reset, because you're going to come back with a fresh mindset a couple days later, right? If you just take the weekend off, that's what I do sometimes. Come back Monday and go, okay, how am I feeling right now? Let me look at how I was feeling this past Friday. Let's think how I was feeling a couple months ago, and then try and make the most, educated decision, and also just being steady, right? This market that we call the stock market, that didn't make a lot of sense, but the stock market and Bitcoin, all this stuff, it's so volatile. There's so much noise. There's so many ups and downs. So like, really, you have to like completely pull your emotions out of that. But you have to realize, like, us as humans are emotional creatures just by nature. So you have to just reset sometimes. I feel like that's honestly what's like helped me the best, if that makes sense, in terms of like improving my investing and just overall analyzing the markets, is just not being too hard on myself, like, oh, I got to be doing this all the time, and just stepping away from time to time, right? Or just mental reset, like, okay, let's just chill, let's relax, and we'll get back at it. And realizing you don't have to do it all in one day. So, like, oh, I got to figure this all out, read this whole report, listen to this whole conference call. Okay, we could always circle back to it, right? We could always circle back. My favorite corporate term. It's like, oh, hey, can we check on that? Let's circle back on this. Let's circle back. Me and my coworkers, shout out to them. We're always like, we love using the corporate jargon, like, as a like, let's pin a pin in that. I'll look into that, right? Like, I love the Batman meme. I don't know if you guys ever seen that. It's like when someone asks you to do something at work, it's like, I'll look into that, and then Batman like dips away. That's exactly how it goes. I can't do a Batman impression. I'll have to work on that. But eating the dog, eating the cat, changing the subject. They just captured Grant Harden. Who's that? I'm not even sure. Let's see. Agreed. Maybe I'll check a game out one day. Hockey's awesome. Yes, sir. Hockey's awesome. Are you going to be for all day earnings? Because I can. Basically all afternoon. I'm going to start 3:30 Eastern and just go through. Earnings will come out right at 4. And then I'll go as long as I can, to be honest with you. Just rock and roll. That's how I go. Yep, very true. Got to take a breather. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's how it goes, right? It's how it goes. So you got to get mental clarity sometimes, because then when you have mental fog, that's where mistakes are made, I feel like. So, but again, that's just me. Know thyself, and just, I feel like, always have the mindset of always be improving, even if it's little by little. And even also the thing is too, I haven't read the book, but my brother's talked to me a lot about it. The Atomic Habits, one of the main themes of the book is like, you want to build these habits, but then when you fall off for a day or a week or a couple days, whatever it may be, you have to get past that and be like, okay, that's in the past. These are my habits I'm building. Because I feel like once you fall out of like if you're, for example, like working out 3 times a week and then you don't, you're like, I don't know. That's all right. I didn't do it yesterday. What's the point? It's like you have to keep going at it and realize like you're going to fall off the wagon sometimes, but just have the mentality of like always getting back on, right? Always getting back up. And okay, yeah, I didn't stick to my habits, but I still want to have these habits. So I'm going to keep grinding at it, right? And it's going to take time. And then a coworker of mine used to say to me a lot, like, it takes 6 weeks to build a habit. It takes 6 weeks to build a habit. So unless you're perfect in the first 6 weeks of whatever habit you're trying to build, you're probably going to take longer than that, right? He said it takes at least 6 weeks to build a habit. But all right, now I'm just going to like full motivational talk. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I got for you guys. I don't want to drag it out too long, but again, stay tuned. So it'll be Monday night, time to be determined. I'm thinking around 7, maybe a little bit after dinner, get completely settled in after the day of work and just get locked in to prepare for earnings. We'll do one last preparing for earnings stream. And then on the day of earnings, starting 3:30 Eastern, and we'll go through earnings at 4 o'clock, cover everything live, and just go as long as I can. So again, I appreciate you being here very much. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I always feel so corny when I say that, but sub and like, at least appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys in the chat. I love bouncing ideas back and forth. Sometimes I'm not always going to be like, it's hard honestly when people throw things in the chat. I'm like, I think of a quick response, but I love it because it makes me think, right? And then sometimes I jumble my words, and then I look back, like, I think about that more, read into that more, and yeah, it just kind of goes back to always try to improve. But talk is cheap, takes money to buy whiskey, right? So I'd rather just execute than talk about it too much. And yeah, just gonna keep rocking and rolling. Watch some hockey tonight. Spend the weekend just chilling, getting reset. I've been growing some stuff, so you can see back here. My arms are sore, but got my plants. So I got to get more dirt to actually plant, but I have another one of these upstairs. So I've gotten into like growing stuff. So I'm growing peppers and basil, squash, and tomatoes. I have pepper plants almost ready to go, right? And then I tried carrots. That didn't really work. I have like one carrot that's just about ready, and then some basil. So call me Farmer Tetron. Call me Farmer Tetron. Because, yeah, it's just a new hobby I picked up. I like outdoors. It's like reset. Because my job day to day is I basically help people move money in and out of what I do, of my company. So constantly just, and then I'm trying to read financial reports, look at GameStop. It's just like numbers. It can be very tedious. I'm like, all right, I need something, just a hobby that just helps me like outside of that, right? And I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out because I feel like I like the idea of owning land one day and growing my own stuff. Partly as hobby, partly as like, so you don't have to buy as much stuff, right? So building a sustainable lifestyle. I don't know. I'm just figuring out, just trying it out right now. But we'll leave it right there. Yes, sir. Have a good weekend, everyone. Do less. I'd rather be skiing. Populist nationalists, because I can. Michael Tucker, Angel, Sergio. Make no mistake. I think I already said you're ready. But yeah, everyone else, have a great weekend. Take care.